Hello, everyone. For this week's episode of Lifelong Learners, I want to talk about my experiences with grief and loss. I have been going through a rough time recently with losing my neighbor Avis. I thought it would be a good idea to talk about how I process grief and loss since I have autism. If you want to listen to more episodes of Lifelong Learners, you can find me on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio and YouTube. Come along with me as I talk about grief and loss from my lived experience. Your host, Holly Tetreault. I have had a hard time processing grief and loss. Let me explain why. First, I have autism and a mild intellectual disability, which makes it harder for me to put into words how I feel when someone dies. My slow processing speed can make it challenging for me to understand what is going on in the moment. The day I found out Avis died, it was shock mixed with denial because the Wednesday before, I just saw her when we were all having lunch. I didn't know how sick she actually was. On January 16th, 2026, I was waiting for Mom to come over. As I opened the door to let her in, Justin, who is my housing coordinator, was standing in the doorway with her. I was trying to figure out what was going on. Then Justin tells me to sit down, and that is when he told me that Avis passed away. At first, my jaw almost hit the floor because I was in so much shock from what he told me. Then Chatty, my vocal stim, started yelling one-word phrases and saying that this wasn't happening. Since I have autism and a intellectual disability, my body has a hard time processing these emotions that come with grief and loss. Most of the time, I will be vocal stimming because that is the only way my body can express how I feel. Stimming is a way for me to process difficult feelings that I can't put into words right away. Losing Avis has been hard for me because I felt like Avis was the sister that I never had. The things I enjoyed about Avis was her personality. She was always caring about other people, and she accepted me for who I was. I am writing about Avis because her life was taken too soon, and I wish she was still here with me today. It hasn't been easy for me to let myself feel how I feel about her death. I'm trying to live my life to the fullest. I lost my best friend and neighbor, but I'm trying to be kind to myself. This is the first time I have been able to write about my experiences with loss and grief. Usually it would be too triggering for me. I am finding that I can only focus for short periods of time because I am still processing the loss of my neighbor, Avis. I have to take more breaks from my schoolwork or I get overwhelmed. Every time I come home, there's something missing. I don't see Avis and her dog Nala. Her dog liked me so much, and Nala would whine every time I didn't pet her. There's definitely been a void in my routine. The first few days were tough for me because I was vocal stimming at night while I was trying to go to bed. The denial for me was worse this time around than it was almost 2 years ago when Terry passed away from cancer. I find now when people even mention Terry, I go into full-blown vocal stimming. Even just putting into words how I feel is hard. Some days it's hard for me to cope with these feelings. Other days it's easier to focus on my homework or do what I need to do. Grief is a complicated topic. It's been 3 weeks since Avis died, and it's been hard, but I am slowly picking myself back up. There are days where it's hard for me to talk about Avis, and it triggers the loss that I experienced almost 2 years ago. It's hard for me to open up to people when I lose someone I care about the most. It hasn't been easy for me, but I'm hoping this will help me heal and process the emotions I'm feeling. Having autism and losing someone is hard because I find that it takes longer for my brain to register what is being said to me. Also, I am trying to balance school and finding time to let myself process my feelings. For me, grief has been coming in waves. Some days I am happy and wanting to do things. Other times I just need my alone time so I can cope with these feelings. I've been trying to do my art and focus on my homework so I have something else to do besides being sad or angry because Avis isn't here anymore. Losing Avis was like when I found out almost 2 years ago that Terry died. It's been triggering those emotions of sadness, loss, depression, and like I said, it's been hard for me to focus on my homework. Losing Avis right before I started school on January 29th was even harder. How do you expect me to find time to grieve and then to do school at the same time? I was in the same situation almost 2 years ago. September 11th, 2024 is when Terry, my other neighbor, died, and this was hard for me because I just started my second to last semester of college. I was still working at the farm. The Friday after Terry died, I came home from work and two of my neighbors were standing in the hallway. At the time, I didn't know Terry lost his battle with cancer. My neighbor Mary was the one who told me about Terry. Once she told me, I felt like I was going to fall to the floor. It was hard to hear that he wasn't here anymore. I just went into my apartment and started crying because I was in so much shock. It's like I am going through similar thoughts and feelings right now. Both times my vocal stimming went crazy, and also being in denial, the lack of sleep, and not being able to focus. These are the same things I experienced when I first lost Terry. Now I am slowly getting back into my routine and using my coping skills. Being in school and doing my podcast helps so I have something to do, and I am continuing to help others like me. I haven't journaled much about Avis because I wanted to save it for my podcast. I want to explain to people that there isn't a right way to grieve. Being on the autism spectrum, I realize that stimming is a way for me to cope with loss. Even if I am vocal stimming, flapping my hands or whatever, I also find that I need things explained to me more than once because it can be overwhelming at first. Also, explaining what is happening after the person dies is crucial because it can be confusing when I don't know what is happening, where the person is going. Sometimes not explaining the situation in enough detail can cause me anxiety. I remember asking so many questions that day and feeling confused because I didn't have all of the information. I was glad that Mom was there this time. I think that made a difference, having people I knew tell me, but also having Mom there for support. That's it for this week's episode of Lifelong Learners. Today I talked about grief and loss from my own lived experience. Next, I want to talk about autism and medical appointments from my own lived experience. I want to thank Alex and everyone at GCC and my fans for helping me to get my lived experiences out there. You can find Lifelong Learners on YouTube, where you can subscribe to my channel for free. You can find Lifelong Learners on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. That's all for this week's episode. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on what's next. Your host, Holly Tetreault.